Hi guys! Yes,
Hello.
it's the twosome. Here we go. Uh, yeah, lovely Marci is with me today, and if you don't know who I am Nathan, and we're part of the lovely TCS Everyday Psychics, and we are going to show you a video, a point of view video. Sorry, I have to look at my phone. I have no idea. So we're going to Dudleytown, if you know where that is.
Yes. Oddly enough, it's actually 1 hour away from me.
Oh my gosh, I've
Is
never
it?
heard of this place, but
I had never heard of this place until it
insanity.
crossed my feed, and then it
Wow.
was like it's illegal to go here. And then it's an hour away from me, and I was just a little
I want
too.
to. You're probably like, I want to go. I want to go. I want to go.
Yep. It's not illegal to go
I've never
there
been
with
there,
our
but okay. It
energy.
says insanity disease of dark entry forest mystery,
All
and
this
this is
work.
by RoanokeTales. Apologies if I said that wrong, but anyway, they've got loads of videos and films on site, and I've just subscribed, so it looked really good. And
Mhm.
on that count, obviously, we love your comments, so let us know what you think of the video, and we're please like,
Like, subscribe,
subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It
comment.
does help.
Yep.
Yeah, please like because it helps the
Algorithm.
algorithms,
Mm-hmm.
and comments are really good as well. You know, we
Yes.
love them. We love them. Even if it's a slight say you love the video or be
Mhm.
constructive. Yeah.
Yes.
And what else? Well, this looks like an interesting
And
video.
it's not the first time we're attempting to do this.
No, it wasn't because last time we wanted to do this and we couldn't play it. So
No.
fingers crossed, I've managed to change the system so that
Yeah.
I actually can play it.
Yeah.
So let's see. We'll
Yeah.
start. So
I think
all,
we got this. We're
I
going
think
in.
we've got this as well. So
Yeah.
let's go.
Town is haunted, though. What could have transpired that would give people the impression something horrible would happen if they entered it? To understand that, we need to start from the beginning. The plot of land to be Dudleytown was originally owned by a man named Thomas Griffiths, who was actually one of the first people to, they say, settle this region, but really that just means that he purchased it. And this was in the 1740s. As far as we can tell, there are really no records or anything physically that we have that points to him actually having lived here, but he did own half the land in 1741. Some time would go by, but eventually another man would show up by the name of Gideon Dudley in 1747. This man, having actually, lived there and being one of the first to go in and be the absolute Chad that he is, would name the town after his last name. But because of his family's past, or supposed family's past, which we'll get into in a moment, it is said that his mere presence would go on to corrupt and curse the land and town that would begin to form. This curse would go all the way back to the 1500s for some fairly.
Sorry to pause it just then. Have you forgot to ask? Have you got? Do you feel anything at the moment? Do you get anything?
It's really heavy. Like, it's hard to breathe. Like, it's like the air is so heavy and like moist. It's almost like I'm really having to like breathe, like really concentrate on breathing.
It's
Yeah.
tight on the
Yeah.
chest. Um, I straight away I thought, why is the town suddenly cursed? But I don't necessarily think it's him. I think it's the original settlers that were.
Yeah. I get
Um,
a lot of like ding ding ding, like original settlers,
yeah,
conflict with these people coming in and wanting to own the land,
yeah.
and yeah, uh, a lot of rituals to make it so that they weren't going to be super um
It
like the
almost
town
feels
wasn't
like,
going to get very big, they
yeah,
wasn't going to be very successful there.
yeah. I think as soon as you got there, you would just receive every bad luck that would be coming.
Yeah, yeah,
Nothing seemed
it's
to go right. So it just sort of one thing after another, and it's
no,
like
it's like the
people
whole
left and
town
right.
has like evil eye. Like
Yes,
that's what
yeah,
it's like as
yeah,
soon as you walk there, they don't they don't want you to like the town does not want you to be there. The land doesn't want you to be there. Not the town, but the land.
Yeah.
doesn't want you to be there, you know.
Um, yeah. I also get a sense uh, we don't want this to be recognized.
Yeah.
And that's whether it's speech, seeing, hearing, feeling. It's really weird.
It does
That's,
want to stay hidden.
yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think it's for that purpose of they don't want people here. They don't want like Walmart to come in and, just concrete it over. Like the land wants to stay the land big time.
Yeah. It feels very strong, very strong, like an epicenter.
Yeah.
Which seems weird because I've been to play different lands and and sacred places and stuff like that. With this, it just gets it reminds me of, and I know there's I'm gonna try and think. So, One Division. The whole
Right.
town was stuck in a town, and around it was the globe.
Mm-hmm.
People couldn't get in, couldn't get out.
Right.
This is what this feels like. It feels like it's under a globe
Yeah.
itself.
It's its own it's its own like ecosystem. Like it's yeah. Me and my husband just got done watching the show From, which is also
Oh gosh, I'm watching it at the moment. If you haven't watched it, guys,
no,
really,
it's
really
great.
good. I'm
But
halfway
it
through it.
kind of, yeah, it gives off those vibes where like
This,
you cross
yes.
a certain line and you're playing a different game. Like it's not, yeah,
You know, which I that really resonates with me as well, because I wonder if what I feel we see the derelict town, but the
right.
actual reality is not.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it'll go through like activity current, like if there's anything comes out of there, right? Like
yeah,
that's unexpected.
it feels everything
Or
underneath this dome. Feels like there's a dome, and what you
yeah,
see isn't what you get.
right. This is just what we see from the outside
Yes,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I get you. Yeah.
Nefarious scheming against the British crown at that point in time. This curse had its start specifically in 1510 in England. A man named Edmund Dudley had just been beheaded for his involvement in a plot to overthrow King Henry VIII. Because of this failed plot, apparently someone would go on to attempt to place a curse on the family for such treachery. Didn't know the British were into curses like that, but hey, why not? It's the 1500s after all. This apparent curse would go on to allegedly follow the family all throughout their own personal history and seem to jump to others as well who were close enough, like a cosmic chlamydia. People who believe the family were cursed would go on to say this because from where they were, it must have seemed like an 18-carat run of bad luck that would also end up in resulting in the end of others. Edmund's son, John Dudley, who still had his head attached to his shoulders, would then go on to not really learn so much from his old man's own quick relief of his problems and would attempt to control the British throne by arranging for his son, Guilford, to marry Lady Jane Grey, who was next in line for the crown. After Edward VI met his end, Lady Jane would then become Queen of England for a short time before this too would come crashing down, which ended up in the execution of Lady Jane, John Dudley, and Guilford,
Oh my God.
which at that point, is it really worth going after the crown? I'm going to go ahead and say no. But as you can tell, the family wasn't doing so hot around this point. Maybe the issue is trying to control the British crown. Who knows? It's a mystery. While this was going on, it would continue to get worse for the family because those that weren't playing Game of Thrones were just trying to live their life and maintain their own glory. Guilford's brother, who was a military officer, had returned home from France, but with him brought a plague that would be fairly potent. This plague would jump from soldier to soldier and then spread to other officers that resulted in hundreds and possibly even thousands of people meeting their end in the country once it began to spread. Now, a little bit of reality, back in the day, it's not like they really knew who actually started it. All they could say was that someone was presenting symptoms, whereas most of the people returned back could all still be suffering the same illness and then spread it to others, but not yet were showing signs of sickness. But back to it. John Dudley's third son, Robert, who was Earl of Leicester, would look at this and basically say, nope. He got out of there and decided to travel to the New World, which, judging by the stuff that was happening in the colonies at this point, I mean, was it really that much better? Who knows? But what this did afford him was a new start and a way to escape likely the growing hatred of his name by others. Coming to the New World, he would have a few children, and one of them, William, would settle in Guilford, Connecticut. William would then have his own descendants, Abel, Barzillai, and Gideon. And Gideon is the only one who doesn't look like a bad Scrabble hand, who would then go on to purchase land in the Cornwall Township. Now, it seemed that everything was coming up Millhouse at this point, but there were some major discrepancies concerning what was happening and who was actually related to who, which we'll get there in a little bit as we fully flesh out the story of this doomed village, because it definitely was not a town. After the village's establishment, it would appear that something was wrong with the area in general, which not really like nefarious supernaturally, but while not likely seeming ominous and foreboding, reported strange things would continue throughout the centuries. This is largely blamed on the Indian burial ground in the area from specific Mohawk tribe, but it seems that the first settlers of this area were actually doing all right. Now, to this day, you can still find people talking about how, like, oh, there's strange lights and I see apparitions and yada yada yada, but none of that's really been confirmed, so it's all anecdotal. But this would change over time, as odd occurrences and disappearances in the woods would make it more difficult for people to continue to believe this area was not tainted in some way. Just as a refresher, in 1747, Gideon Dudley would purchase some land from Thomas Griffiths, who would go on to establish a small farm in this area. Now, one of the things to note is because this was a valley, the shorter growing seasons due to the mountain shadows, it being in the northeast, meaning the summers were shorter and the winters were longer, and the rocky soil would make this like a really tough endeavor to farm in. But Gideon would press on, and by 1753, Gideon's two brothers, Barzillai and Abel, would also purchase land nearby. I'm not sure what was up with the Dudleys, but another Dudley would then also arrive a few years later and go on to marry Gideon's daughter, despite being connected in just a different family line. Woof. I get it. Yeah, back then, everybody was trying to hook up with their cousin, but okay. Anyways, it's probably why there were so many issues with like the English and French crowns, but as time passed, the village would continue to grow slowly, but the environment was always a little odd. 3 large hills resided around the village, which had the curious effect of making it essentially nearly dark by noon. This would affect the farm's ability to produce, and with it contributed to the slow growth of the area. However, the rocky soil was good for something, and this would allow for foundations of buildings to be built fairly easily. Over time, settlers would enter the area, where quite a few families would join with the Dudleys. The Joneses, the Pattersons, the Tanners, the Dibbles, and the Porters would settle this area as well. However, it really started taking off once iron ore was discovered, which would completely shift the town's purpose. This town was really just a few homes and never had any of its buildings like to do its own thing with, so it was really just kind of a neighborhood if you think about it, and they would live out of it, which required for them to rely on the nearby town of Cornwall. By 1854, the town would reach its peak size of 26 families. From here, the town would actually do quite well, at least for a little while, as they would also turn to the dense forest that was near the town, as selling timber was something else they could do to kind of bring in some more income.
I don't know if you got this. So I was just, God, he could talk so fast.
Yeah.
You have to really listen and concentrate. I suddenly got taking from the land.
Yeah.
The iron ore, the timber. I think that was part of to live there and just grow and stuff like that was fine. But I think it was things that was actually what do I get? Went against them was the manufacturing of the land, rather than using it just for you living on the land was fine. That's what I got so far. Have you got anything?
When he was talking about, he's marrying her and they're trying to do this and all this, social Game of Thrones thing, to me, it just looked like little toys doing their stuff, but it's not even part of the bigger picture of this town. That's just what the people are seeing and preoccupying themselves with, but it's still the land, the space around them that is the bigger force here, not the people. And I agree, when the people are respectful of the land, then they're okay. But as soon as you start chopping, digging, mining,
That's where
it's
starts to go wrong.
yeah.
I didn't get so the curse with the Dudleys from England. I don't think that was nothing to do with it.
They
I think,
feel like an annoyance to me.
yeah,
Like from the
just
bigger
yeah,
picture, like when I hear Dudleys, I get like a little twitch, like a oh, like they're just like
yeah.
they were more
I don't think
annoying than like just get this thing off my, from a land perspective, like just get this
it's,
annoyance out of
I
here.
didn't feel a curse to the family or anything like that. I think that was just um, I get hearsay that just happened over
Yeah,
the years.
I think
But
that's just humans trying to do the human
yeah,
and
yeah.
reasoning thing. But yeah,
I
they
also
feel annoying.
I also got when you were saying about the family to house, I got incest,
Mhm.
interbreeding, and then that caused a problem as well. Obviously, it will do
Sure,
in genetics, but
sure.
I got because you mainly as they start taking from the land, then things started happening with the birth of their children and stuff like that.
Okay, so it's a combination of
Interbreeding and stuff, and
right.
yeah.
Hmm.
It feels that. Okay,
Yeah.
well, we won't be going there soon, will we?
No, I think I'm
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Iron
Okay.
continued to be their main selling point, however, as over time, timber was needed less and less, but while they appeared to be prospering, there were also concerning events that would pop up that seemed to plague the small town from the start. So now from here, it depends on how you look at it, and while I love bringing you guys some creepy things that happen, you always need to have like a pinch of reality to keep you grounded, which we will cover in a bit, but the general consensus is that there is a ridiculous amount of disappearances, cases of insanity, and just weird deaths that appeared to have happened in this town. It just didn't match up with what else was happening in other towns, like in the same area, so it was a little odd. So, time passes, as time tends to do, which ultimately would result in some.
Sorry, I have to quickly pause. I suddenly
Huh,
got.
if you got
Uh,
something, say it.
yeah. Which,
Oh,
but
like
not
in
in the
the
town.
town, like
No,
of the
no.
town.
It seems
Okay.
like it would be out. Her cottage, or whatever, would be outside of the town.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Is that the disappearances that
I
you're?
don't know. I don't know. I was when he was saying, just got yeah. If I felt a witch
Mm,
outside the town. So some of these, some of the causes were due to her, but not all of them.
okay,
So it just said this is one of the puzzle. Boom.
for sure.
The more strange occurrences in the town, which is ultimately why people decided there must have been some sort of curse, and it would continue all the way back to its founders. The three Dudleys that lived here would eventually move out of the area, likely due to the fact that it would be more difficult than normal to sustain life there. You're literally playing life on hard mode. I mean, even more so when the Midwest opened up, and there was way more fertile land out there for people to farm, and it was much more tenable. One Dudley would remain, however, Abel. And what's odd is the ones that moved out fared actually pretty well and would go on to succumb to natural causes after a long and fruitful life. However, Abel, who remained, would lose his fortune and his mind would begin to fail him towards the end, and he would then meet his end in 1799 at the age of 90. Now, clearly, this was
That's
a
a good
long
age.
life, but it was the way in which the end of his life went that left him mentally vacant that concerned people. Also, accompanying this, he could no longer pay his debts, so the town would then take his property, sell it, and then he would be made a ward of the town. They say he was insane towards the end. However, we are going to have to discuss that. So, 7 years before the end of Abel, he would have a friend in town by the name of Gershon Hollister. While he was building on the William Tanner's homestead, they're actually just constructing a barn, he would then end up being killed, and this is kind of mixed up by accounts. Some claim that he fell off the barn, which resulted in an unsurvivable impact with the ground, and others claim that he was actually lured into the home of William Tanner, where he was taken out. Regardless of what happened to Gershon, it's what happened to William that alarmed people. See, while Abel was contending with his own issues concerning his mental stability or lack thereof, William would start to exhibit the same type of issues. He would end up losing his grasp on reality as well, and eventually would succumb at the old age of 104 years old. He was labeled as only slightly demented, though, at the time that he met his end, but the things that he would say would cause further alarm to those that were still living in the town. Prior to his end, but shortly after he began to exhibit the same mental degradation as Abel, he would claim that there were these strange creatures that would begin coming out at night out of the woods and into the small village. Some seem to suggest that seeing these creatures is what led to his mental downfall, as he would never properly explain what they were, just that something was out there and it was aware that the village was here, which, back then especially, everybody was much more superstitious about what's out in the woods. I would suggest that, but then again, looking at my comments, maybe that's not so different from nowadays. I don't know, but it's just when somebody says things like that, and you have to remember this was back in the 1700s. There was no artificial light. It was pitch black out there, and it was already dark during the day. It would probably scare a lot of people. But another man by the name of
Did you get anything with that?
So I think he was seeing things. I get that that's true, but I also get that his mind is starting to play tricks.
Have you seen the film The Village?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know why suddenly that is in my head.
Village vibes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think some of it is probably folklore,
Okay.
and it feels like
The village is where they're dressing up, right?
yes.
Yes.
And I think
Okay.
I get a feeling that they didn't want more people to go. They wanted people to keep inside.
Yeah.
So they did something like that, just like The Village.
Interesting.
So that created the folklore, the mysteries and stuff.
Mhm.
With that, it did have its own stuff to
Yeah.
go with it. So they just added to the plethora of scary things and to keep people close together.
Yep.
Yeah, there is something else, but I don't know what that is yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
My cat's joining us now, so
yeah.
if you see her
Nathaniel
jump.
Carter, who also moved to Dudleytown early in its inception back in 1759, upon staying in the house that was once owned by Abel Dudley before he was made a ward of the town, a horrifying plague would creep in quietly that would go on to take the lives of the Adoram Carter family, which were relatives of Nathaniel. Battling depression to this point, he would then leave the town 4 years later and move back to New York in 1763. The curse, however, would continue to follow this man because he would ultimately move to the Delaware wilderness next, which was not land controlled by the fledgling colonial government. I mean, if you can call it a government, we still answered the crown around this time. He would be taken out by an attack of natives along with his wife and newborn, and the other 3 younglings were then taken by force up to Canada, where the 2 daughters would be ransomed. David, however, which was the son, would remain with the tribe and go on to marry one of their women, and then later return to the United States for education. Interestingly enough, he would then go on to serve as a justice on the Supreme Court. Eventually, the United States would then beat back the British with pitchforks and farmers because the USA is awesome, but another man and his wife would move into the area, although there is some debate about this. This man was a general in the Revolutionary War and served under the realest of them all, George Washington. Now, his house was off another road, but was nearby, known as Bald Mountain Road, where you can actually still see his house to this day, but it's fairly close to the actual Dudleytown village. As his wife was standing on the porch one day, she was struck by lightning, which would take her out on the spot. This would send the general reportedly into some form of insanity. However, some claim this was because he was old and senile. For some reason, it appears in this area that people who end up here tend to struggle with an advanced form of senility that isn't just able to be chalked up to standard degradation of the mind. The fate of Dudleytown would continue to devolve around the Civil War as well. A lot of people would just pack up and leave, mainly due to the more difficult living situations, and with the mountains affecting the growing seasons, the dark forest adding into the difficulties, and the elevation being around 1,500 feet, making it a colder location than those at more sea level areas, this in general was a multi-pronged issue. Food was hard to grow to support the town, and the town had to rely on other towns, so why not just head to those towns to make life easier on yourself? Due to this line of thought that took me 3 seconds to think about before finding a much better way to live my life, the town meeting its demise is actually not surprising in the least. Still, the strange occurrences would continue even with the population decreasing over time after the Civil War. Around 1901, when only just a few remained within the village, one of the few remaining residents of the town, known as John Patrick Brophy, would have a tragedy befall him as the hits just kept coming for this guy. It started out with his wife and how she would meet her end with consumption. This is tuberculosis, if you didn't know. The reason for its name is because it appears to consume the body as you waste away. Tuberculosis around this time was quite common, and antibiotics for it would not be discovered for several more decades until 1944, when streptomycin was used, and then in 1952, when a triple therapy would be discovered utilizing para-aminosylic acid and isoniazid, along with streptomycin to assure the curing of tuberculosis. Despite John knowing what was coming down the pipeline, as he had struggled watching her with this for years, he was obviously still distraught over the loss of his wife. As he was struggling with that, his children would enter the woods shortly after the funeral to never be seen again. Now, grain of salt, they may have actually done this on purpose, as they were accused of stealing sleigh blankets, which, I mean, yeah, they may have stolen something, but that's not really worth wandering into the woods never to be seen again. They would be searched for, but to no avail. John would be crushed, but life tends to come in threes, and usually when you're down, it likes to kick you in the crotch. His house would then burn to the ground, which may have actually been John's doing. It's never been confirmed, like the cause is still unknown. But if my wife was gone and my kids were gone and I didn't like where I live, I'm just gonna burn down the house and walk away, you know? It's called literally smoke them if you got them. However, after this happened, he too would walk into the forest, never to be seen again. Considering he was one of the last few residents hanging on with the loss of his family, others began leaving until the early 1900s, and then Dudleytown completely dried up, with everyone either having lost their mind, disappearing into the forest, taken out by lightning, or having just moved away to meet their grisly end, or maybe just leaving and then being totally fine. The homes would be overtaken by nature, as the wood used to build them rotted away, which left only the foundations and cellars of what used to be there. The forest will then move back into the area, and today the town is completely deserted. The only ones who still show up at this point are people trying to satiate their curiosity, or tourists, or possibly the occasional lost hiker. But the story goes that the Dark Forest Entry Association owns the land that the village once stood on, and a group of homes where the general had lived, amongst others, are off the beaten path and are owned by the nearby residents, so really nobody goes to those areas. Possibly one of the more famous stories to come out of Dudleytown is about a man named Dr. Clark. We know it was around 1900 when Dr. William Clark would be driving along and then come across the forest and would be absolutely infatuated with the idea of living there. Walking into the Dark Forest entry, he would claim it was peaceful and exactly what he was looking for. Having grown up at a farm in Tenafly, New Jersey, he yearned for a quieter life after becoming a professor of surgery and teaching at the Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons. Being based in New York, yeah, I can't blame him for wanting some peace and quiet. I would do the same thing. He would then go on to purchase about 1,000 acres of land in the wilds of Connecticut, and within that purchase was Dudleytown. After locating this beautiful forest, he began construction immediately on his summer and vacation home. As the next few years would pass, he and his wife Harriet Bank Clark would visit the house on weekends and during the summer until it was finally done with very little issue. Once completed, it became a holiday house and utilized for short trips in the summer and for things like Christmas and Thanksgiving. They would continue to visit all the way through 1918 near the Dudleytown area. One summer in particular, while they were out enjoying the forest, Dr. Clark would be called away to New York because of an emergency. He would go to the train station and then be back within 36 hours. However, upon his return, she had apparently gone completely insane, much like many of the other residents in the area had done so themselves. Information about the actual event is a little sketchy, but for some reason, others would claim, like literally people who weren't there, that small creatures must have come out of the woods. They say it attacked her and she ended herself soon after that. Now, some...
So I have to pause there. So early on, you know, the kids went into the forest.
Yep, I was just going to say, let's go back to that.
Yeah. What did you get from that?
So I don't know what other videos or what other video this was from, but you know, I got sort of like sleepy vibes and also like portal vibes, right? So it's like it kind of lures people in, and then you either go to sleep and nature just grabs you, or like you actually do kind of walk, into another dimension, or you do kind of dip out like
Yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
way. Um
I got I got a touch of that, but I also got that when the guy who oh, I must build my holiday home here. I got
yeah.
exactly the same what you saying. The lure.
Hmm.
It's it feels like a yearning. I've got to live here, and it's like then your demise happens. Have to
Yeah.
take something. You want something, I need to take something from you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I get it's older than
Yeah.
people realize. I won't. The other thing I got, I also another film, which I was like, oh, okay, why am I getting this film? Um, oh, I can't remember what it's called now. The Watched, The Watchers, maybe it's The
Wa-
Watchers, or The
Watchers.
Watchers, yeah.
Hmm.
And it's about these people in a forest, and they're being put into this makeshift outhouse, and there's a big glass. They can't see out, but things can see in to where they are. There's about
Okay.
five of them. Anyway, it's to do with fairies.
Oh,
If
okay.
anyone's watched this, who hasn't watched it, I'm so sorry. I've just told you what they are. But there's
I
fairies.
haven't, but that's
Um,
okay.
and I don't know because I haven't. Oh, I've met plenty of fairies in my time, but
Well, we're not
um,
talking that
I haven't.
this
I don't
dimension.
think I've actually met actually real ones. But I
Right.
think I got this sort of weird, weird sort of spirit
Sure.
type thing with this, and it seems to be more to this. I think it's the area rather than the town.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
associated
I
for some
agree.
reason.
It's the land.
Yeah.
And there may be other dimensional beings coming through, which
Again,
will
I think
drive you
it's to do
crazy.
what it's to do with your need for the land and how you are as a person. I think if you're a very greedy, selfish person, the land would take you.
Mm,
But people who are good with the land or good around, I don't think they
right.
necessarily would have that because
Well, I feel like they wouldn't bother. Like you kind of mentioned, if you're greedy, this is very appealing to you, this area, because
yeah,
they want those types,
yeah,
that type of energy. So it's going to attract that type of person. Same thing with the Dudleys, annoying, greedy,
yeah,
just no, 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 like just food, right? Like for the
yeah,
land
yeah.
to, yeah.
So what do you get in terms of all these people going mad?
I feel like it's just a lot of, like, I get like just pressure, like it's almost like an like relentless mental pressure. They kind of buckle, right?
Yeah,
They can't make sense of what's happening, what they see, and they just kind of start to deteriorate
yeah.
mentally,
I got
yeah.
suddenly a picture of Norway or the Arctic. You know how they have only a certain amount of sun per year, and you have to
Right.
be good, and it's many dark. They have to make sure everyone is well in these towns, otherwise,
Yep.
people commit suicide. They have I mean, I think Norway has one
Yeah.
of the highest suicides in the world. I get
Sure.
that sense with this area as well.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yep.
don't know why
Deficiency.
she the last woman why she committed suicide. Don't know, but there's something more sinister with that. But I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I think that was, I feel like it was leading up to that even
Yeah,
before he left.
Yeah.
and he left, and then she just being alone in the place just kind of cracked,
Yeah.
was the final crack. Um,
Who knows
yeah,
the
I don't think
theories?
it was like, oh, she's super happy, he leaves and then comes back and it all
He
happened.
hasn't done the washing. He hasn't cleaned the toilet. I'm going to get him.
Yeah.
That's it. I've had enough of marrying you.
That's it.
You didn't
Yeah.
put out the trash.
Yeah.
That was
Just
it.
gonna go for a walk and then,
Yes.
and then never come back.
But
Okay.
this story is true. She suffered actually an illness prior to
here
going
we
out
go.
there, but it is unknown what she had, and she did unfortunately take her own life later on. But this may suggest that it was more of a mental illness or some sort of physical one that could cause enough pain for someone to finally crack.
Yeah.
Dr. Clark would continue to also remain in his summer home and would recover from his wife's end as well as you can, I suppose. A few years later, he would then move on with his life and remarried and would take his new wife to the summer house until an even larger one would be built in 1930. Around this time, in 1924, Dr. Clark, his wife, a few other doctors, friends, and interested landowners would go on to form the Dark Entry Forest Association, which would help preserve the forest that Dr. Clark thought was so beautiful. This first meeting would be held in 1926 and had 41 members, and Dr. Clark would continue to live his life where he met his end in 1943, whereas Carita, who was his wife, would pass in 1948. Still to this day, many family members are still out there and are having no issues, which sort of brings up a problem, doesn't it? Well, it's not a bad problem. Anytime you're not getting bodied by something supernatural, it's a good thing. However, after Harriet Clark passed in what appears to be 1918, nothing else has really happened for the last 105 years. The locals in this area claim there is nothing even remotely supernatural about Dudleytown. In fact, there's a story of some ghost facers that showed up and saw one of the local residents on a horse and said that she was a ghost, as the horse's hooves didn't touch the ground, which she thought was completely ridiculous. Some argue this curse does exist, and if you go do a case-by-case basis for the area and what could be expected, it does seem a little high for this specific village. But with the family line not even existing to bring the curse over from England in the first place, things start to get a little muddied. Because of this, people have begun to question if there really is a curse that follows them, and sort of like that one guy on TikTok, I know, bear with me, I know, it's cringe, but it is what it is. He invited all these witches to curse him, and he's still fine. It was probably smart to question this curse. But in this case, it was even worse for the evidence of the curse, because for it to follow William, he would have had to have been the son of Robert of Leicester, if you remember from way back at the beginning. But it would seem that he isn't, actually. Robert only had 2 sons. One of them ended up passing early on, which seems like horrible luck, but was actually quite common, which is why people had so many children. And the other son Robert had went to Italy, where he had children, and all of them would remain there. So this severs the link between Robert and William, meaning William's sons who founded Dudleytown would have no connection to the actual curse. There are other examples of this apparent story that have been talked about as if they are real, but in actuality, they seem to be completely made up. One such story is about a man named Horace Greeley, who was actually the founder of the New York Tribune. Greeley married a younger woman named Mary Young Cheney. Her connection was that she was apparently born in Dudleytown and ended up leaving, but in reality, Mary was born in the nearby Litchfield and had never even stepped foot in Dudleytown. In 1833, she would leave that area of her birth and then live in a vegetarian boarding house that was owned by Dr. Graham, who actually created graham crackers. Now you know that, that's in your brain. He would become involved in a movement at that time just known as wellness, and while she was in the home, she would then meet and later tie the knot with a man named Horace Greeley. In 1872, Greeley ran for president against Ulysses S. Grant, who I am supposedly related to, but obviously Greeley would lose the election. Just prior to losing the election, Mary would suffer from an unidentified lung disease that would cause her to meet her end. That would occur in New York City, where her husband and 2 daughters would go on to attend the funeral. She is still buried in Greenwood Cemetery, and the bizarre thing is people would claim that she ended herself and that she was from Dudleytown. Saying that she was from there and others didn't seem to make it out in a permanent way, the legend was crafted to explain why Greeley lost the election and what would become of Mary. A month later, Greeley would also succumb to the cold embrace of the ground, and this further fueled the legend into permanence. The issue is that if you aren't from Dudleytown or super close by, you should be okay, yet this person wasn't, which this breaks pattern. Even more issues would begin to arise because doing the research on this, look, I don't always want to be debunking, but a fact is a fact. So I know it's kind of annoying, Like, I wanted to just make this channel as, like, fun things, but it's really hard to just ignore, like, actual blatant, like, no, this didn't happen this way, because then I'm just kind of lying to you guys, which I don't really want to do. So I know it sucks that we have to do this, but we're going to kind of break down some of this stuff. So anyways, let's get...
Hang on, before he does that, did you get anything from that?
No, I just felt like he was going off on this weird tangent that has no connection to Dudleytown.
Yeah.
Like the activity of whatever was happening was just not connected to the land anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, those are unfortunate things, but unfortunate stuff happens all the time.
Yeah. I agree. I think also people from the town that left, it was just coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think it was a curse. Like, I don't get a curse.
No.
I get that the land didn't like a lot of the Dudley family, and but not in like a cursed way. Just
Yeah.
just the people who they are, like it didn't like them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of weird. Did you get anything?
No, just same as you. Just seemed
Kind of random.
random stuff that would happen. People, it's that era. People died of TB and that stuff. It was, where now we have cancer or other things. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
and we some of the things back then, yeah, for sure we can cure now, but I mean, nothing from the town.
Okay. Here we go.
Like a little deeper on just a few of these stories. So first things first is with the forest itself. It is said that if you enter dark forest entry, all the bird noises stop. Well, the people who own the private land that have been in there themselves, they have no idea why people are talking about this as if it's a real thing, because they hear birds all the time. There is no silence in the forest that is purported by those who haven't actually been there. I know, boo this man! Anyways, Abel, for instance, was said to have been driven insane by the curse, but his neighbors said they didn't describe him as such. Instead, they said he appeared as if he was just distracted, which eventually resulted in him being unable to care for himself beginning around 1756 or even possibly earlier. In 1771, a petition was propositioned to the Connecticut General Assembly for reimbursement of taking care of him by his neighbors. They again would never mention that there was really anything that unusual about him or his mental capacities, apart from the fact that he was just old and senile. And judging by the fact that it was progressive, I'm going to go ahead and say sounds a lot like dementia. I mean, that's how it operates. It's just one day, it just seems like you're a little more forgetful or distracted, as they would say. And then a couple years later, it gets really bad. It's just a very unfortunate part of life for some people. But they, again, never mentioned it was like this crazy thing. And also, he never actually had any wealth, apparently. And the only land that he did have, he did not cultivate. The same can be said for General Swift, as he didn't suffer from supernatural insanity, but instead lived to be like 81 years old and likely also had a form of senility. Even with his wife, things like this just sort of happened. Homes at the time didn't have lightning rods on them, and as such, houses regularly got struck more than you might imagine. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still like a low chance to be struck by lightning, but it still happens, like today. Ultimately, I will tell you that you should probably stay away from this place, though, not because of some supernatural influence that will result in you going missing or losing your mind, but because the private landowners are absolutely for real about you not coming on their land, mainly because over the years, apparently people have showed up, set fires, vandalized, and littered, which is why we can't have anything nice nowadays. So the cops will absolutely arrest you on site for trespassing if you are caught out there. But that still doesn't stop people from going in, which, in that case, those people really haven't reported back anything supernatural at all. With that, I believe it really comes down to sensationalism. There's nothing new about also the elderly displaying senile traits. These actions and personality shifts can be alarming to people who are not used to it, but it's something that a lot of us might actually have to face as we age, as our minds begin to break down. Some more than others. I would also like to point out that around this time frame, there is no telling what sort of metals were in the water, and considering mining operations were taking place to pull ore out of the ground, it's possible that toxic material leached into the waters, and those that were already teetering on issues would have their bodies sent over the edge as they appear to degrade faster.
I didn't say way into the the video. They were drinking something. I got that early on, and it was just stuck, shit that was in the water, and that didn't help themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think, unfortunately,
Yeah. I think again, like the land is just not.
not great at times.
Yeah, it's not meant for a large amount of people.
We see it actually quite frequently happen now if water supplies become contaminated. As for the other supernatural elements, I see several issues. The first is these creatures in the woods were never really identified as much of anything. In fact, dementia can cause a person to actually have hallucinations or see things that aren't there, and this is most common in people living with dementia with Lewy bodies, although other types of dementia may also cause hallucinations. Other stories were changed to also make those that left to have been like afflicted by a curse when really they just went on to meet their end under very natural causes like years later. Again, the strangest one, or the least likely to happen in general, is being struck by lightning. But again, we have people to this day that are taken out this way. Or the stories state also Dr. Clark left Cornwall forever after his wife took herself out. But that's also just not factual, as he literally helped develop the Dark Entry Forest Association with the help of others and remained there as well. I saw a video, I forget who did it, over Dudleytown not too long ago. Was it Mr. Ballin? Maybe it was Mr. Ballin. Probably Mr. Ballin. Anyways, doesn't matter. Great storyteller, but it's just unfortunate that there is a lot of things that are actually disproven in these stories that make it way less fantastical. But all in all, it's just a plot of land that is privately owned and was foolhardy of an area to set up in the first place due to its location, naturally occurring features preventing an easy growing season, and a darker forest giving it a more ominous tone than intended by the literal name chosen for it. I vote we all start calling it Bright Forest of Whimsical Frolicking and watch how quickly the conspiracies around it dry up. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. This one is going to get blasted in the comments, but if you enjoy, leaving a like would be great, and subscribing is a great way to stay up to date on when I post. Let me know what you guys thought about this town. Honestly, it doesn't seem to me like much of anything. It's just an abandoned town because of a poor location that is creepy because it's abandoned. The mining facility likely bolstered other towns in the area, but Dudleytown likely never really took off because anything that they actually needed, like obtaining provisions, were in other towns. They never got those themselves. So it just met its natural conclusion. Yeah. But anyhow, thank you guys for watching. I really do hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.
Okay. I have to agree with them a bit, but there's certainly, I still get this, there's something in the land.
Yeah. There is, and I disagreed with, yes, I'm sure some of the people hear birds, blah, blah, blah. But I disagree that there isn't a part of the forest where you, again, portal, transition, it does go silent. Like, I feel like there are patches where that does happen, and that's indicative of a transition.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course you're gonna hear birds in the majority of it. But you go out into that forest, yeah, I think it's the forest. It's old.
Yeah, land's old.
There is something drawing, people.
I think it's in general, they just want to keep it shut.
Yeah.
That's what I get. Just keep quiet. Boom, boom.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go there. Even though I'm
Marci,
like I feel like it's like almost like a yeah, right. You can
on your own, take a little camera.
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, they'll do like a Blair Witch.
And you have the camera right up to your nose. We can see it's not dribbling out.
Yeah, I just don't think I'd make it back, probably.
Yes.
The birds would go silent and I'd be like, shit.
Or you're so hungry, you eat your left foot. And when they pick you up, they go, Marci, you're only gone an hour. Felt like days. Yeah. Yeah,
if I could. But no, I don't really have that sort of motivation to go out there.
It always reminds me also like, Chernobyl. you know, why would you
Yeah.
go there? But they say it's very eerie, you know, everything. And I think it's probably, if you look at how old that town is, it's just got history around it because it looks spooky, you know.
Sure. And
It's
a lot happened. A lot of trauma happened
but
to
hasn't a
people,
lot of
to the
towns
land, to, I
hasn't a lot
mean,
of towns had trauma? You know,
yeah.
people died, dementia, whatever, you know, and sort of stuff. I do think some things probably happened because they were probably drinking from the water.
Yes, that definitely
That
did not help.
that really
Yeah.
landed.
But that's just, again, I feel like the land is like, it's poison. Like, it's not, it doesn't want people to inhabit, like, to
Yeah,
inhabit the space.
yeah,
It wants, and then the whole, like, I forget the name, guy creating that, like, preservation or society. To me, that felt keeping people out. It felt kind of greed.
yeah,
Whereas, like, this is my space. I need to, this is, we need to
yeah,
protect it,
yeah,
but it's more so to keep it like locked down.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let's,
yeah.
yeah.
I get
It,
that as
it's
well.
I don't I don't think anyone should build there.
Or go
No.
there.
Yeah,
Okay, well
no.
that was a very different video. I don't know what you
Yeah.
guys, the viewers, what did you think? Let us know.
Yeah.
Please put your comment. I don't know if
Mhm.
you know the area yourself. Let us know.
If you've been there,
Yeah,
yeah.
or you know places similar. Any new
Yes.
videos you want us to investigate? Please let us know. It'd be lovely, and we'll get
Yes.
onto it.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank
This was
you. We look
fun.
forward to seeing
Yeah.
you next time. It's
Yes.
goodbye from me. It's a goodbye
Goodbye from me.
from
Yeah. Goodbye from me.
Marcy.
Yes.
Take care, guys.
See you next time.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.